welcome back to our channel. Got pennies from 1982, 1990, or 2010? You might be holding a hidden treasure, starting with the 1982 penny. Did you know there are 7 varieties, and some are worth hundreds? The 1990 penny without a mint mark is rare and can bring in serious money, and the 2010 penny? Look for die breaks and striking errors. Collectors are paying top dollar. Smash that like button and subscribe. You won't believe what your pocket change is really worth. In 1982, the heartbeat of the U.S. Mint pulsed with quiet urgency. The nation's economy had been strained by inflation, metal costs were climbing, and policymakers were making decisions that would quietly reshape America's coinage. That year, without much public fanfare, the penny was undergoing a transformation, not in design, but in soul. For the first time since 1909, the humble 1-cent coin was being forged from something other than solid copper. The Lincoln cent had long held its place in America's pocket change, iconic, familiar, and overlooked. Abraham Lincoln's left-facing bust remained unmoved on the obverse, and the Lincoln Memorial stood stoically on the reverse. But beginning in mid-1982, something monumental occurred. The U.S. Mint, in response to rising copper prices, shifted the composition of the cent from 95% copper to a new copper-plated zinc core. Lighter, cheaper, and easier to manufacture, the zinc cents marked a turning point in modern coin production, but transitions rarely happen overnight. As 1982 progressed, both copper and zinc cents were produced, simultaneously, sometimes on the same days, often at the same facilities. Dies were reused. Planchets, coin blanks, were interchanged. The result was a chaotic overlap of varieties. There were 7 different combinations of the 1982 cent by year's end, including large dates and small dates in both metal types, from different mints. Most collectors took note of the change, some even began hunting the varieties. But none could have predicted that amid this whirlpool of alterations, something extraordinary had slipped through. The discovery didn't happen in a bank, or a coin shop, or even a collector's stash. It began in the hands of a man in Indiana, a retired machinist, part-time metal detector hobbyist, who had found an old jar of coins in his late uncle's shed. He sifted through hundreds of pennies, tossing aside duplicates, setting aside those with heavy wear or peculiar toning. Then one coin stuck between his fingers. It was a 1982 penny, but it felt heavier than the rest. Not dramatically, but noticeably. He dropped it onto the table. The sound was different. Sharper. He placed it next to another 1982 cent, same date, same design, but the ring was wrong. Curious, he pulled out a jeweler's scale. This coin weighed 3.11 grams. The others? 2.5, a copper penny, nothing unusual there. Plenty of 1982 copper pennies had been made before the switch. But there was something else. The date. The style of the numerals. The 2 and the 8 were noticeably more slender. He'd seen this before. A small date style. That's when the realization struck him like a lightning bolt. At a 1982 small date copper penny, every known small date version had only ever been found in zinc. Every small date copper cent reported up to that moment had been debunked or dismissed. Yet here it was, staring back at him from the surface of a coin that felt no different than the countless others he had tossed aside. He rushed to consult a trusted coin dealer, who immediately recognized the gravity of the find. The dealer tested the coin for authenticity, dimensions, weight, metallic composition. The tests were conclusive. This was no fantasy piece. No altered coin. It was struck on a genuine copper planchet, with a genuine small date die. Experts were stunned. What should have been impossible had somehow happened. The working theory pointed to an overlap in production timing at the Philadelphia Mint, where dies and planchets from different specifications crossed paths briefly in the chaos of transition. An early small date die had likely been used during a batch of copper blanks before the change was fully complete. Whether it was a mistake, a trial run, or sheer oversight, no one could say. Word spread slowly at first, then rapidly across numismatic circles. Forums lit up with speculation. Collectors across the country began weighing their 1982 pennies, magnifying their date numerals, hunting for that elusive combination. Most found nothing. Some found zinc versions they'd never noticed. But a very select few, only a handful, found what they had never expected: more small date copper 1982 cents.to date. Fewer than 20 have ever been certified and authenticated by top grading agencies. Each one has commanded intense interest. And the most pristine examples, the ones spared the wear of circulation, with sharp detail and perfect luster, have gone on to sell for truly astonishing sums. At the peak of demand, one example, brilliant red, virtually flawless, surfaced at auction. After an intense flurry of bidding from dealers and private collectors, the final gavel struck. The price landed between $42,000 and $108,000, depending on grade and strike sharpness. For a coin that many had once believed couldn't possibly exist, the validation was more than just financial, it was historic. What makes the 1982 small date copper penny so captivating isn't just its rarity, though that's undeniable. It's the layers of transition and tension captured in its very being. It is the offspring of a bureaucratic pivot, of metal prices dictating change, of human error inside industrial routine. A bridge between eras, an overlap of intent and accident. Every millimeter of its surface whispers of decision and deviation, but perhaps the most fascinating truth is this: the coin looks so ordinary, unless you know what you're looking for, unless you understand how it should feel, sound, weigh, and present. This cent could sit in the palm of your hand and vanish into anonymity. It hides in plain sight. It doesn't demand attention. It waits quietly, buried among billions of others, indistinguishable until someone finally listens closely enough to hear its difference. It remains a reminder to collectors everywhere that value doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes, it hides in the smallest places, in the weight of a coin, in the curve of a digit, in the year when everything changed. And that within the most mundane pieces of history, extraordinary stories are still waiting to be uncovered. In 1990, the presses at the United States Mint rolled on with the confidence and precision honed by nearly 2 centuries of coinage. At Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, billions of coins were being struck to meet the country's growing demand for currency. Pennies, as always, dominated the output. They were the smallest denomination, yet required the most effort due to sheer volume. In a sea of copper-plated zinc cents, each looked exactly like the next. Year after year, the Lincoln cent bore the same trusted image: Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the stately Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, surrounded by letters so familiar they hardly warranted a glance. But in the routine, where repetition was the norm, an anomaly sometimes crept in, silent, accidental, unnoticed. That year, the U.S. Mint made a subtle but crucial change to its coin production, one that would inadvertently open the door to a remarkable mistake. Proof coins, struck in San Francisco for collectors, had long carried the telltale S mint mark, a tiny but vital detail that set them apart from circulation coins. These were polished, carefully handled, and minted with exceptional clarity. Each die used for proof coins was carefully examined and inscribed with the mint mark before being placed into service. But the process, though methodical, was not immune to human error. And in 1990, for reasons still not fully understood, a batch of proof coins was struck at the San Francisco Mint, without the S mint mark. It was an error that shouldn't have been possible. The mint mark was applied manually to each die used for proof coins, unlike circulation coins, where it was part of the master die. This meant that every proof coin should have had its mint mark carefully added before minting began. And yet, at some point, a single obverse die went into service lacking this crucial detail. What emerged was a coin that defied expectations, a 1990 Lincoln cent, flawless in its strike, mirror-like in its fields, crisp in detail, yet missing the small S beneath Lincoln's bust. It was a proof coin in every sense but one. This small omission was not obvious at first. The coin looked perfect, its polished surface gleaming under the light. Only the most attentive collector, familiar with mint marks and trained in the difference between proofs and standard strikes, could notice something was off. The first known discovery was made by a dealer in California sorting through proof sets purchased directly from the U.S. Mint. He paused when he saw the cent in one of the cases. It sparkled like any other proof, but the mint mark was absent. He double-checked the packaging, 1990, San Francisco. All the other coins bore the S. The nickel, the dime, the quarter, the half-dollar, all perfect. Only the cent lacked its identity. The dealer reached out to a grading agency, who confirmed his suspicion. What he held was a genuine 1990 no-S proof Lincoln cent. It wasn't altered. It wasn't counterfeit. It was a mistake of the mint itself, a ghost coin that had slipped through under the most tightly controlled circumstances. It should never have existed, but it did. News traveled fast in numismatic circles. Proof set collectors across the country began checking their collections, opening cases, examining coins under magnification. A few more surfaced, just a few. Perhaps fewer than 200 in total, all from sealed sets distributed early that year. Each one sent ripples of excitement, not only because of its scarcity, but because of the sheer improbability of its existence. These weren't simple die errors or doubling. This was a minting blunder that required multiple levels of oversight to fail. The absence of a mint mark on a proof coin, especially a modern one, was considered virtually impossible. And that impossibility made it all the more sought after. It didn't take long for the market to respond. When the first high-grade examples reached public auction, collectors were ready. Bidding was fierce. Seasoned numismatists, registry set builders, and investors all recognized the significance. This coin wasn't just rare, it was iconic. The price soared. Depending on condition and clarity of the strike, the 1990 no-S proof penny began selling for between $38,000 and $95,000, instantly transforming what appeared to be a 1-cent piece into one of the most valuable modern-era coins in circulation. At the upper end of that range were coins that graded PR 69 DCAM. Deep cameo proofs with minimal imperfections, their fields pristine, their devices razor-sharp. These top specimens commanded the highest attention, with collectors recognizing their potential not only as trophies but as blue-chip investments. The difference between one penny and another, it turned out, could be a missing letter, one that defined a legacy, but the story didn't end with value. The coin's existence raised questions still debated today. How could a proof die escape the mint mark application process? How was it installed into service without being caught? How many coins were struck before the error was noticed, if at all? And how many might still remain undiscovered, tucked inside unopened proof sets, hidden in attics or forgotten drawers? The mystery only added to the intrigue. Collectors began paying premiums for sealed 1990 proof sets, hoping to find their own no-S cent. Stories surfaced of buyers discovering the elusive coin while casually flipping through sets they'd owned for decades. For some, it was the numismatic equivalent of a lottery win, a stroke of luck buried in something once considered ordinary. Perhaps the most poetic part of the 1990 no-S penny is how unassuming it remains. There is no dramatic visual error, no misspelled text or wildly off-center strike. It is a proof penny that gleams, perfect in appearance, until one looks for what isn't there. And that absence, that tiny omission, holds the power to transform a simple copper-plated zinc disc into a 5-figure treasure. The coin reminds us that rarity often hides in subtlety. That mistakes, even those made in silence, can echo for decades. And that in the world of numismatics, every detail matters, even the ones that are missing. Today, the 1990 no-S proof Lincoln cent stands as one of the most celebrated modern mint errors in American coin history. A reminder that even in an era of mass production and tight control, surprises still happen. Mistakes still escape. And sometimes, one missing letter is all it takes to write a new chapter in coin collecting history. In 2010, the U.S. Mint was settling into a new rhythm. A century had passed since Abraham Lincoln first appeared on the obverse of the 1-cent coin, and just the year before, the Lincoln bicentennial cents had celebrated his life with a series of fresh reverse designs. But by 2010, the penny bore yet another shift, this time marking the beginning of a new era with the Lincoln Shield reverse, symbolizing Lincoln's preservation of the Union. It was a design meant to feel modern, yet reverent. Official statements called it a return to stability after a year of commemorative designs, and for most Americans, it barely registered. The penny was still the penny, but beneath that ordinary shield, inside the vast machinery of Philadelphia and Denver's minting operations, something had gone awry. The transition from one coin design to another is never as smooth as it appears. Dies must be swapped out. Planchets must match updated tolerances. Entire production lines shift gears. And in that chaos, tiny cracks can form. Minute oversights can bloom into rare mistakes, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to notice, and someone did. A coin dealer in Ohio, known locally for his obsession with Lincoln cents, was leafing through a box of uncirculated rolls. He'd been tracking minor variations, small die breaks, RPMs, anything that set one coin apart from another. The shield design had only just begun circulating, and he wanted to get ahead of the curve. He cracked open a roll marked 2010D and began flipping them, one by one, under magnification. Most were standard. Crisp strikes. Some minor dings. But then he paused. One coin looked off. At first glance, it was identical to the rest, shiny copper plating, the same profile of Lincoln, the same shield with E pluribus unum arched above it. But something in the rim caught his attention. The edge seemed thicker. Uneven. The denticles, the tiny tooth-like design elements along the coin's edge, were partially missing. And when he flipped it over, the shield itself looked mushy, almost doubled. But not like a typical double die. It was more dramatic, yet confined. And the color was off. Slightly darker. Slightly more golden. He weighed the coin. It came in slightly heavier than normal, a fraction of a gram, but enough to trigger suspicion. Next came the magnet test, negative. Then calipers to measure the thickness and diameter. Everything seemed close to standard, but not quite. The anomalies added up. He sent the coin for metallurgical analysis. The results stunned him. This 2010 cent had been struck on a foreign planchet, believed to be intended for a coin struck for another country entirely. The copper plating had taken to it, but the underlying core metal was different from the standard zinc. This meant that at some point during production, a non-US blank had entered the mint system, probably a result of shared facilities used for international coinage contracts. It should have been caught. It wasn't, and it wasn't just the planchet. Close inspection revealed this coin had a misaligned die strike, leading to partial brockage on the reverse and faint doubling along Lincoln's ear. A trifecta of errors. It wasn't simply a mistake, it was a perfect storm of minting anomalies. Wrapped in the cloak of an otherwise ordinary-looking penny, the dealer submitted it to a top-tier grading agency. The verdict was unanimous: authentic, unique, and one of a kind. Within weeks, numismatic circles buzzed. Photos circulated, theories formed. Other collectors began examining their 2010 shield cents with renewed scrutiny. A few similar coins surfaced, perhaps struck on leftover blanks or with worn dies, but none matched the combination of errors this specimen had. For a modern coin, it was a miracle of rarity, and when the coin hit the auction block later that year, the bidding war that followed was anything but modern. It echoed something primal: desire, rivalry, possession. Dealers from New York, California, and even overseas placed escalating bids. Within minutes, the price had skyrocketed. When the gavel finally dropped, the error-laden 2010 Lincoln Shield cent had sold for between $28,000 and $78,000, depending on grade, uniqueness, and market timing. A penny that had cost 1 cent to mint, never intended for circulation fame, was now a crown jewel in a private collection. But what made it so valuable wasn't just its composition or the mistake itself. It was the year. 2010 was supposed to mark a return to consistency, a post-bicentennial standardization. This error defied that notion. It reminded collectors that even in times of supposed control, the US Mint was still vulnerable to the tiniest imperfections, the slightest missteps, and those moments when the machine didn't behave quite as expected. More than that, it proved that modern coins, often dismissed as too common or too well regulated to produce rarities, could still surprise. That even today, with machines humming and quality checks humming louder, there is space for magic, accidental, unpredictable, and priceless. The coin itself is unassuming. No dramatic doubling that jumps off the surface. No wild misstrike or bold color deviation. It doesn't announce itself with flair. It whispers. It invites attention from those who know how to look, and rewards those who refuse to stop at what appears obvious. It is a coin that speaks to the collector's instinct, not to accept what is seen, but to search beneath the surface. To weigh, to compare, to notice when something feels just slightly off, and in that sliver of difference, whole fortunes can be found. The 2010 Lincoln Shield penny with a triple error will forever stand as a symbol of that hidden world, where a simple cent, if born in the right storm of conditions, can become a rare echo of imperfection that holds history, rarity, and curiosity all in the palm of your hand.